Welcome back to part three. So I just told you about a situation about the situation I had with my teacher at school. Now, prior to that situation, I suppose prior to what contributed to my response to the teacher was a previous situation. And what had happened was that a boy in my school, in my class, was selling these thing called palm sandals, and I remember it was 40 naira, so it was a Friday, and I said, well, let me take them home and see if my parents would pay for them. If my parents would pay for them, then I'd bring the money on Monday, and if they won't, I'll bring the shoes back, the sandals back. So I took it home. My parents were not going to pay for it, so I brought it back. I brought it back, and in the morning. The chap himself, I remember saying to him, look, the shoes are here, and he says, oh, it was just before assembly. We're in the classroom, and he says, leave them, give them to me after assembly. And there was another chap standing with him, and I left the shoes in my locker. I mean, we would go to assembly right outside and come back in. And I went to assembly, came back in, and the guy owner of the sandals says, where are the sandals? And I just opened my locker, and the sandals were gone. So of course, I now owed 40 naira, and I can't understand where the sandals had gone. Now 40 naira in the 70s was in the mid 70s was a lot of money, and I couldn't understand where the sandals had gone. Um, anyway, I had a debt of 40 naira, and I couldn't dare go home and tell my parents because they'd kill me. I was quite scared of my parents, actually. So I didn't want to. I just couldn't go home and tell them. I just couldn't tell them. I tried, but I just couldn't bring myself to open my mouth and say that this is what happened, because they'd whip the bejesus out of me. At least so I thought. And so of course, they give you a time limit to come up with the money, and how was I going to get 40 naira from? And so at different points in time, I'd be going home from school, and they'd come to me, they'd corner me at the back of the school and take my shirt. So I'd walk home with my shorts and my sandals, and sometimes they'd take my sandals, and then I'd go home with only my shirt and my shorts, and sometimes they'd take my sandals and my shirt. And I'd go home in my shorts, with no, just my shorts, and that's it, bare chested, going to my house from school. And on this particular day, they wanted to take my shorts so that I go home in my underpants. And a particular senior, whose name I won't mention, he just happens to stumble on us and says, "What's going on?" And then anyway, he sort of intervened, and they let me go. But many years later, I got to discover that one of the guys who had been standing with the guy who owns the shoes, the sandals, when I was in the class, was the one who actually took he knew that after I left for assembly, he went to my desk, they took the sandals, and they also wanted to make money as well. So the sandals weren't stolen, but they had taken it. But so all of that had happened, and it was right after this situation that the whole thing with the teacher kicked off, and that's how I got into that, and that's really what just made me explode, that I wasn't having this. And like I said, subsequent to that, I got into a fight with one of the guys, who used to poke me in the head with protractor, and then I just thought, what, that was it. Now, by this time, a few things began to change. I didn't like going to school, and I started bunking school. I just didn't go. I wouldn't go. And I remember if I remember sometimes when I showed up in school, my teacher would thank me for making a guest appearance, but my parents didn't know what was going on, until of course when they got my results, and then from a child who was doing quite well, I just didn't do anything. Sometimes I came last in my class. It was just getting crazy. I was really bunking school. I mean, sometimes I'd go and play in Ibobi College. I go and play kashi. and stupidness like that. And one time I went to go and play in another school, and my teacher, I didn't know my teacher was coming to that school for a meeting, and she hadn't seen me in school for weeks, and there I was in my school uniform, so it was crazy. And then there's another, but things got progressively worse. There was another guy, and I don't know how the guy, he was from downtown Lagos. He was a real ruffian. There was nothing but about this guy. He was a real scruffy, rough, hardcore downtown Lagos boy. And I don't know how he challenged me to a fight or something, but by then I just didn't fear it. I wasn't scared anymore. And it's not that I was scared before, I was just civil. And then I'll tell you another thing though. When I was young, I realized early that I had a temper, a very, very, very bad temper, and that in a moment of rage, I could kill somebody. And my mother always used to warn me about my temper. And that's the reason why when people did things, I didn't fight, because I was more afraid of what I would do if I really let myself go. And that's why I used to hold my corner when people did things, because I always felt that I could kill somebody. And I had felt this way for a very, very long time. As very early in life, I knew that I could kill somebody if I didn't control my temper. But this day, this guy wanted to fight me, so we went to some street to go and, there's a field there to have the fight. And this was a very peculiar fight, because the guy took off his shorts, his uniform, stripped down to his underpants. That's all he wore, his underpants. And he broke a bottle, I think it was a Coca-Cola bottle, and he stabbed himself a few times. And then he stabbed me in the shoulder. And the moment he stabbed me in the shoulder, I just felt, yeah, now I can kill him. And I felt liberated in a sense, and I thought, well, you know what, yeah, now I can kill you. What I was going to do, I was going to box him, because I could box, and I was going to batter him, and when he was down on the floor, I was going to take that same bottle and just carve up his back, and just really just rip his back to shreds. And that's what I was really planning to do. And so the fight began, and I was very confident, throughout a few jabs and stuff. I was just ready to go, to be honest. But an old lady who lived across the road from where this fight was taking place, or it started to take place, she saw what was going on, and she must have seen the bottle and everything, and she raised an alarm. And the next thing, oh, you young children, you want to kill each other, and of course we had to disperse. But it didn't end there. Then I got to hang out. When you start bunking school, and you start to meet with different kinds of people, and I began to meet some real hoodlums. I began to meet some real roughnecks, and from there I used to hang out with them. I wasn't really a crowd person, but if you're bunking school, you got to go somewhere, we used to hang out with them. And then I just got deeper and deeper into all kinds of messes, and we used to go to areas and fight, and we were lucky not to get stabbed, on a few occasions, and then I started wearing a knife as part of my uniform. In fact, I had quite a few knives, that I used to take and wear as part of my uniform to school. I'd used it a couple of times. I'd, used bottles a number of times. And at that stage, I didn't really, I didn't really care. I was still nice, but in those situations, I really didn't care. And I had a philosophy that I don't know where I got it from, but I felt that if two or more people attacked you, then you could kill one of them. You by right, you could kill one of them. I don't know. And I always felt that if I got arrested for stabbing somebody or killing somebody, if there were more than two or three, that, it was justifiable, it was justified. And so I always had that in my mind, and then of course, I started smoking weed, marijuana. I wasn't a regular smoker, but I wasn't a habitual smoker, but I smoked once in a while. I didn't do drink, but I did weed, but I wasn't a regular. And uh, I got to meet two brothers who had run away from home and stolen some money from their dad and rented an apartment in my neighborhood. I don't know what neighborhood they came from. And so myself and a few others, we used to meet there every day. We wouldn't go to school, or if we did, we'd go after school and we'd smoke weed. Uh, you know, Now I've got to backtrack and say by this time I'd been asked to leave my initial school. I started going to another school. This is where I really began to meet some real crazy people. This is a stage when I began to meet some real crazy people, and by this time also I didn't really care, to be honest. I didn't really care. Um, and so these brothers stole money, and they used to go, but they rented a house, and we used to go there and smoke weed and all of that. And uh, I remember that one of them had a car. And one morning, very early one morning, I just woke up, and that's what I would wake up in the morning on a Saturday, and I'll just leave the house and go to this guy's house, and we'd all just be there. And I didn't, like I said, I wasn't a regular smoker, but we just used to hang out, and they would smoke. And he decided we should go out, and he wanted to go and pick something up, and we went to pick this whatever he was going to pick up, and we were driving, and we were we were accosted. We got to a junction, and we were asked to stop by the police, or the traffic wardens, not the police, the traffic wardens. And he made out like he was going to stop. And just when the guy thought he was going to pull over and stop, he just sped off. And of course, we sped through a roundabout, and of course, there were what we call mobile police, anti-riot police with guns, and they were alerted and everything. And I remember I looked back, while my friend was speeding down the road, and all I saw was two officers, these anti-riot guys, stood there, and they were taking aim. So I started to shout. I said, "They're going to shoot! They're going to shoot! They're going to shoot!" But for some reason that I can't explain, a taxi driver crossed the line of their fire and stalled in front of them. And then I saw them sort of chase everybody down and jump into the thing. And well, they were hanging on the door, by the doors. They didn't get in. They were hanging on the doors. And they started to give chase. Invariably, we turned off the high road into this area, a very volatile area. And it was evident that something was going on. And while the car was in motion, my friend got out. The driver of the car got out. And I thought, well, you know what to do. So I got out too, and the car just went off. We're so grateful. I'm so grateful that it didn't go off and kill somebody, because it crashed into another car or building to come to a stop. He ran off in one direction. I ran off in another. I could see them. I saw that the police giving chase had just turned into the road where we fled from the car, and on the corner there was a shop. And I ran into the shop, and I said to the guy, "Look, we're not thieves. This is what happened." And the guy he hid me under his counter. And about 3 minutes later, the police came and said, "Have you seen two young thieves?" That they stole a car, and then all of that sort of nonsense, which was not true. And the man said no, he didn't see anything, and he hid me for some time, and then I got a cab, and I went home. The thing with the car was this. There are certain police stations in Lagos where, when they impound cars, they just leave them outside. They don't put them in a compound. They park them on the road. And some of these cars might have been there for a long time. So what my friend would do is he would go around, and sometimes they park them around the corner from the police station because there's nowhere to park them in front, And so he would have scoped a car for a while, and then he would go and hot rod the car at night and drive it off and start using it. And whenever that car expired, he'd go back to that police station on another and do the same thing. And so this particular car was of that category. So yes, it was stolen. But I got to admit that I didn't know it was stolen until that day. He was telling me afterwards, because I couldn't understand why he didn't stop. I know that the car didn't have a key. He always used to sort of touch the wires, but then I thought, well, he lost the keys and that he couldn't get new ones, and so things like that began to happen. The other thing that began to happen also is that I started going out and not coming home. I'd go to a party, I'd leave home on Friday, I wouldn't get home till Sunday. Then I was leaving home on Thursday, not getting back till, and then and my parents would, be very cross with me because, of course, they didn't know where I was. There were no mobile phones. Um, and eventually, I remember once I went to a party and I came back 3 days later, and my parents said, go back to your mothers and fathers on the street. And so I went back. Now, quite a few of us that went to those parties, some of us lived with our parents, and some of us, they were just lived on our own kind of thing. And we went back uh, to this place where the party was held, and the people who threw the party were girls. So in a way, we just all started living together. In fact, we just lived together, we hung out and everything, and stuff like that. Now, the neighborhood where these people were staying was not exactly a middle class neighborhood per se. It was a bit of a tough neighborhood. It was a bit of a rough neighborhood. They're nice people, but they just happened to be living in that sort of neighborhood due to circumstances. And but some of the guys in the neighborhood took exception to our being there, and they were quite territorial, and they felt that we'd muscled in on their girls and all that because, all the guys that came from my neck of the woods, we were all seeing one of the girls in that, So, and I remember one day we were walking down the street and we got attacked by these guys. They came with sticks and stones and bottles, and we were very lucky not to have suffered serious injury. And eventually we made peace with them that same day, and they invited us the next day to come to a bar. It's just some sort of street shack, a shack on the street, where you just sit there and drink. It wasn't like a bar, it's a roadside thing. And they invited us to come round the next day. I was eager to go because we couldn't afford to be fighting, and we were in their neighborhood, and anything could go down. What I didn't know was the head of those guys, those, you call them hoodlums, area boys or whatever, was a guy who was involved in armed robbery, and he had been he'd done a crime, and he'd been on the run for a while because the police were looking for him, and he kind of laid low for a while, and so he just come back to the neighborhood. And so they gave us an appointment, something like 4:30 or 4 o'clock, and I hate being late. I'm a stickler for time. And there's this one chap, he also was a Surulere guy, and he was late, and I was hopping mad. I mean, I was really, really livid, because A, I don't like being late, and two, I didn't want a situation where they think we're disrespecting them, and then next time they see us in the street, they attack us. It could be worse, Anyway, he came late. I was mad, and eventually we went to this place. And when we got there, all the seats were overturned, and there was blood everywhere and everything. So we asked the neighbors, the people around, what's happened here? What's happened here? And apparently, somebody had tipped off the police that this guy and his crew, the guy we came to see and his crew, who attacked us the day before, were drinking there. And so when they came, they just gunned everybody there down straight. And if there's any a time where I was thankful for being late, that was the day, because if we had gotten there on time, we would have been laid out same way. And I can tell you now, because I knew people who got laid out by the police same way. Extrajudicial killings, that's what you call that stuff. And I know people personally who that happens to, and so God saved my life that day. But it didn't stop there. And then there was another situation, we had, and that night was a very bloody night, and the summary of the story is that we knew a guy in a certain area. It was a rough area as well, but he was He was a student, by the way. This guy was not he was a student, but he was also the head of the. He was kind of the leader of the hoodlums in that area, kind of thing. He was well known. I won't mention his name, and he was a bit of a gangster. And he was in control of the gangster of that particular area, and two of our friends, a friend of ours, a friend of mine, set us up. So basically, what happened is there was something that we had that other people, other groups, other interested parties wanted, but we had the thing. And when I say we, it was myself and the brother of this guy who I got involved in the car situation. The brother and I had this thing, and the head honcho of that area, he was the guy that gave us some sort of protection. So we knew that if we came into that area and we were with him, nobody could touch us. We knew that, and people wouldn't touch us because of him. And so one evening we were supposed to meet with him, and he wasn't there. So we decided to go to a bar, on his road actually. And we were sitting down, and we were drinking, waiting for him to come, and suddenly I just felt there's something very wrong. There were some people in the bar, and I just felt that we were being watched, or something weird was going on, and people were positioning themselves, and so I asked a friend of my friend who I was with. I said, we need to go outside, something's happening. And I'm going to end it here because I've exceeded 21 minutes, but I'll continue in my next broadcast.